Hey, I'm Michelle Caswell, and this is the Purely His podcast. I'm really excited today to have Mikaylah Rogers with me, and we're going to talk about a really delicate subject. We're going to be talking about the pain and the loss of having miscarriages and postpartum depression and anxiety, and just really talk about Mikaylah's story and what she has overcome. And I just think a lot of women out there are going to be able to really relate to your story. But I think a lot of them are going to want to know, like, okay, yeah, you went through all this hard stuff. So did I. But how did you heal from that? How did you go on, and how are you doing that now? Like, what's your life look like now? So I was just thinking we could start off with what your life looks like now, and then we can just kind of backtrack and talk about some of the hard things you had to go through to get where you're actually at right now.
Right. Yeah. So my life right now, I'm a mom to three amazing little boys. I am married. I am going on 2.5 years almost. I'm an insurance broker. I just recently broke into the influencer world on
Mhm.
TikTok. So that's been really fun and exciting. I think that has really kind of been like evolving in my life, as in like sharing my story as a mom and what it looks
Mhm.
like as a mom of three. So really exciting stuff going on there. And then yeah, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're really busy. That's one of the things
Yeah.
I've noticed
Yeah.
about you, but you seem to like handle it so well. And, I've
Mm-hmm.
been following you on TikTok
Yeah.
lately too. And one of the things I always see, like in your captions, when you're like modeling the different
Uh-huh.
clothes and stuff, you'll say something like, mom of three, just trying to find my style after having children,
Yeah.
And so I always think that's so cute, because I think that so many women out there are like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have kids now. Now I am married. I have completely changed as a person. Now what am I supposed to dress like? Like, now who
No.
am I?
Yeah, no, seriously. So, like, before being a mom, I feel like I had a certain body type. I grew up playing soccer for 24 years, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was so used to like everything fitting a certain way. And then after my first son, it was like, oh, like, okay, my hips are a little bit wide. And after my second son, it was like, wow, like things are really not fitting the way they fit my whole life. And
Yeah.
so I think that's been a challenge for me after having my third kid, is like I've really had to like evolve with my new body
Mm-hmm.
and find a style that suits it and looks, I feel comfortable in,
Yeah.
but also stay fashionable and stay in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love sharing my outfits on TikTok. I love inspiring other moms to try to find their fashion again after having kids,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's so easy to fall into this like Adam Sandler lifestyle, which I totally am here for and I love. But I also like to dress up and feel cute.
Yeah.
And that's been a struggle for me. So if I can like put in my best efforts to find a cute outfit for the
Yeah.
day that I like, that I feel confident in, and then post it for other moms too, like, hey, we're moms, but we can still have style and fashion. We can still be in with the cool kids. So it's been fun. Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you have such a heart for moms.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that that's a really big part of your identity now,
Uh-huh.
is that you're a mom.
Yeah.
And so, backing it up a little bit, did you always want to be a mom? Like, did you have like this amazing mom and you're like, gosh, I want to be just like her? Or, like, where was like your inspiration to like, now, like, this is who I am. Like, I'm a mom and
Mm-hmm.
I just love this.
Right.
Like, did you always feel that way?
So, growing up, my mom and dad got divorced when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
My mom went through some hardships, and she had two kids before she met my dad. So, her and my older brother and sister went off to California, and my dad raised me. And
Mm,
that was rough. But
yeah.
I think because of that and the experiences I experienced through that has made me the mom that I am today.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being a little girl and growing up and seeing my dad and how great he was, and seeing my dad and how bad that he wanted a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for him, but also he wanted a mother figure for his kids.
Mm,
And I just remember being a little girl, like, I cannot wait to be a mom because I cannot wait. Like, I'll never leave my kids. Like,
yeah.
I don't care what the circumstance is. Like,
Yeah.
I want my kids to know that I'm going to be with them through and through. And so, and that's kind of exactly what it's played out to be. So my
Mm-hmm.
kids are my best friends. I feel like because of what I went through when I was younger has made me the emotionally supportive mom that I am. Um,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's kind of growing up. I've always been like, I need to be a mom. I need to have a lot of kids. Like,
Mhm.
I have so much love in my heart that I need babies. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, and you needed to be something for someone
Yes,
that you didn't have in your life. So it's
exactly.
like
Yeah.
because of your loss, because of
Hmm.
not having your mom present, you're like,
Right.
I want to be a present mom. I
Yes.
want to like
Yeah.
give all this love to someone
Hmm.
and give to them what was lacking in my life.
Right.
And it's interesting too because you a lot of your TikTok page is about like fashion and
Hmm.
and owning like being a mom but being cute and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming being raised by a dad,
Yeah.
you probably didn't get a lot of like fashion sense from him or a
Yeah.
lot of like, here, let me show you how to do your makeup. Like,
Right.
yeah, how do you go from that to like where you're at now? Like,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So like that was something I struggled with growing up because my dad was very much like, you and your brother are gonna play sports, and he never took me to the cute stores in the mall.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd go to school and all the other girls would have their hair braided and maybe start wearing makeup and just super cute outfits and
Yeah.
really in with the style. But me, I was in like sweatpants and hoodies and
Mm-hmm.
Converse. I remember I used to love Converse that were two different colors.
Mm.
Um, and so that wasn't really in, but I liked it. And my
Yeah.
dad was like, cool, whatever you want to do. That's fine
Yeah.
with me. I didn't have a mom like guiding me, like, no,
Yeah.
it's picture day. We need to do your hair, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think growing up, I had a lot of insecurities because I knew I wasn't popular. I knew
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in, and I was very jealous of a lot of the girls in my class in middle school and even
Yeah.
into high school. So I think going into adulthood, it's almost kind of like, hey, like I can be cute too. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be the girl that wore my soccer sweats 5 days a week at school.
Yeah.
I do have fashion. I have found my fashion, and I can be cute too. So I think it's
Yeah.
like breaking a lot of my insecurities from when I was a little girl.
Totally.
Yeah. Hmm.
And some of breaking those insecurities is just
Hmm.
taking action.
Yeah. Yep.
It's the walking it out part. It's
Yeah.
actually taking action.
Hmm.
And you are self-taught in those areas. Like you
Right.
didn't just grow up that way and like, oh, well, you've just always had it that
Yeah.
way. And of
Hmm.
course you're doing this thing now
Yeah.
because but these are things that you have found. So it's kind of like
Hmm.
you found your little niche and you found, your calling. You have found these things that you
Hmm.
really love to do. And it's through like your healing journey
Yeah.
of where you came from and then where you're at now. So
Right.
like you shared, you have 3 amazing boys
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
but I know that you have gone through loss. So
Hmm.
looking back and then kind of going forward, what is some of that loss that you have endured in the area of
Hmm.
parenting?
Yeah, so I feel like I got pregnant young, but not super young. I got pregnant when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from my high school sweetheart. It was my first love, my
Yeah.
first love. So that was looking really rough, my first pregnancy. So we actually weren't together. We had been on and off for a couple years, and then we hadn't been talking. And then a holiday party came around, and whatever happened happened. And 8 weeks later, I wasn't feeling well, and so I took
Yeah.
a test. And back then, I don't know what it was, but I think from being a little girl, I was so excited for being a mom that when I saw that positive pregnancy test, I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to be a mom. It was like
Yeah.
all this like overwhelming love just like filled with my heart.
Yeah.
And even though me and his dad weren't together, I was like, okay, like maybe this will change him. He had been struggling
Mm.
with alcohol and stuff at the time. And so I'm like, well, maybe this will be a blessing for him too. So I was really excited, but I was also terrified because I was also a college athlete.
Yeah.
I was still pursuing my degree. So with all this excitement of me wanting to be a mom, I was terrified to tell my dad and my family. I felt like he was going to think that I was this huge failure. And then I was scared to
Yeah.
tell my son's dad because I'm like, wait, like maybe this is the blessing that he's been looking for. But at the same time, like, he doesn't love me anymore. Like, what if
Yeah.
this like throws him off the wall again? Like,
Yeah.
and so when I went to go tell him about it, the first thing that was brought up was just abortion. He's like, there's
Yeah.
no way we can do this. Like,
Yeah.
we're not together. This is never going to work. Like, why put a baby through this? And so for 2 weeks, I sat with me being the only one knowing that I was pregnant.
Mm.
and I prayed about it. I think it was the first thing I really have ever prayed about in my life.
Okay.
Because growing up, we were never in church. My dad spoke of God. I knew there was a God, but I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah.
I knew that we could pray to God and talk to God, but I didn't know who God was.
Yeah.
And so at a very vulnerable moment in my life, I'm like, "Hey, God, I don't even know who you are. But I need you to tell me what to do."
Yeah.
And I know it was on my heart, like, no, whether your dad's going to be mad, his dad's going to leave or not, you're going to be a mom, and that's what you were
Yeah.
meant to be.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so I texted my son's dad. I'm like, I'm keeping the baby. Like, you don't have to talk to me ever again.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. And next I'm going to tell my dad, because I'm going to hope and pray that my dad's going to stick there with me.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And
Scary.
so telling my dad was horrible. I actually didn't tell him until I was almost through with my second trimester. I'd been hiding it the whole
Whoa.
time.
Were you living with him or you weren't living with him?
No, I was
Okay.
living actually in a townhouse with like 5 other girls.
Oh, wow.
And I was scared. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, can I? And then I was going back and forth. I'm like, okay, I know my calling is to be a mom, but like, oh my God, I'm living in a townhouse with 5 girls. Like,
Yeah.
how am I going to make this work? And like, I just knew in the back of my head, this is only going to work if my dad helps me and backs me. And if he doesn't do that, then I'm going to have to figure it out all by myself. And I know I'll make it, and everything will be fine. But I was terrified.
I bet.
And so I lost probably, I think it was 19 pounds before I told my dad, because I was that terrified.
Wow.
One of my dad's my best friend. And I never, ever wanted to be a disappointment to him.
Yeah.
And I knew me dropping out of soccer and being out of college for a little bit just for
Yeah.
processing. So I told my dad, and he was disappointed, but I remember going to dinner with him, and I'm bawling at Texas Roadhouse. And the waitress was like, "Do you guys want water?"
Yeah.
But we're sitting there, and I'm bawling, and my dad just like grabs my hand, and he's not a very emotional guy. So I grew up without an emotional household. You know, the
Yes.
woman in the house
Yeah.
is usually the emotional one. So my dad was always kind of rock hard. And I remember he grabbed my hand, and he was like, "I don't care if his dad sticks around or not. We're going to make it through. Like, you can do
Wow.
this. I know you're going to be an amazing mom." He's like, "I just know, like, this is what you're meant to be, and
Yeah.
we'll get through it." So,
What a relief.
yes. Oh my gosh.
My
I finally ate a
gosh.
meal again.
Aw.
Yeah. And so,
Aw.
at that point I was like, okay, I got this. This is what I'm meant to be. This is what I'm going to do. Carried on throughout my pregnancy, decided to get back together with his dad. He struggled a lot with alcohol, cheating on me while I was pregnant, but
Aw.
you kind of get in this like vulnerable moment where it's like, okay, you get a glimpse of hope that you're going to have this perfect family picture.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that perfect family picture growing up. So that's all I ever wanted for my
Yeah.
baby. I didn't ever want my baby to go through like a separated family.
Totally.
And so through the cheating and the alcohol, I just stuck through it. Because I thought that's what was best.
Yeah.
So we carried on with that for, I think, until my son was about 1.5 years old. And at 1.5 years old, I was praying to God to change my son's dad. And then one night I remember laying in bed, and I just remember God hearing, like, you can't change him. He has to come to me for change. And so that was a hard pill to swallow, because I like to have control
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah.
And that's also something I've had to let go of in my life. But so I just prayed to God. I said, okay, you go change him. I have to step away from my own mental health and like,
Yeah.
and for my son, because it was just getting all sorts of toxic. So I prayed to God, and I said, you change him and bring him back to me if it's meant to be, but if not, you change him
Yeah.
for whoever he's supposed to be with.
Yeah.
And so then I was on this scary journey of being a single mom. And I think that scary journey of being a single mom is why I stayed in the mix for so long.
Yeah.
Because I always had these thoughts running through my head, like, you're a young mom, you haven't lived your life yet. No one's gonna want you. You're a single mom, and
Yeah.
just those intrusive thoughts that aren't true at all.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so I think it was like 3 or 4 months, it was just me and my son in church. And so that was huge for us. I think that got me out of that. You're never going to find anybody you need to find a godly man, because once you find a godly man and God sends you who you're supposed to be with, he's not going to care. He's going to love you, and he's going to love your son.
And that was kind of your first experience with church. Like, okay, I'm like going to church now. So you went to church as a single mom. And in that, did you have any like fears of what people would think of you being a single mom? Or were you like, no, clearly like God really loves me and he wants me here? Like, what was your experience with that?
Yeah. So it took me 3 churches until I found a church that I was accepted in, and I felt accepted in.
Yeah.
So the first church I had went to was right down the road from my house. As soon as I walked in, the pastor was there greeting everybody, and he had never seen me before. So he's like talking to me and asking, and I was like, it's just me and my 1.5-year-old son. He was asking me a little bit about my story to get to know me a little bit better.
Yeah.
And as soon as I told him that I was a single mom, I instantly felt judged. I didn't feel welcomed.
Okay.
And so we stayed for that service, but the whole time I remember feeling like I was the naked person in the room and that everyone was judging me.
Yeah.
And I just remember like walking out from that church, having my son in my arms, and I'm just like, if this is what God's house feels like, I don't want to be there, because everyone has this like, stick together, you have to try to work on your relationship and your marriage and your family, and don't have kids out of wedlock. And so I felt so misplaced.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, let's try again. And so the next church I went to, I sat down and talked to the pastor, and they were like, you're fine. Like, God's got you. Like, no matter what decisions you've made or like where you're at in your life, you can always renew yourself with God. Find yourself with God, and he's going to accept you, the way you are. So
yeah. It is hard as single moms, especially young single moms. I was 18 when I had my first son. And so trying to go to churches and always feeling that way, even if they didn't try to make me feel that way, I always knew like having a kid out of wedlock, I knew it was wrong. But it's like, I love my son so much and I love Jesus. I just didn't know how to live for him, and I didn't know how to heal and all that other stuff. But that is a common thing that single moms will experience going into church. And I believe that that is from the enemy who wants to keep us out of church. Like the exact place you need to be to get healing and to make new friends and to find a godly husband at some point, whatever. Church is exactly where we need to be, but we're so afraid of being judged, or we feel judged when we go there that we avoid the exact place that we need to be. So that's a very common story.
Yeah.
So fast forward now. So you're the single mom, and you're about to meet the guy. Like, so tell us about that.
Yeah. So single mom, very much like, I want to work on myself and I want to focus on my baby. Was not looking for anything, which I feel like that's when the good things come. So I went to a baby shower, and my now husband was there. And I just remember him coming up to me and asking me if I wanted to go on a like rafting date. And immediately I was like, there's no way I'm going out with any guy ever again. Like, I was so closed off, and I think I was so protective, not only over my heart, but now I had a baby's heart to protect. And so going into a dating world was so scary. So after several times of him asking, we ended up going out. And I want to say it was literally love at first sight, something I'd never felt before. Almost like and exactly like when you know. It's funny because we kind of knew each other growing up in high school, but never really talked to each other, just knew of each other. And so that first date where I got to know him and know his heart, I was like, holy moly, you're exactly what I've been praying for. But in the same breath, I was like, you're exactly what I've been praying for, but like, I'm terrified. Like I'm terrified to step into something else again and to introduce you to my baby and like open my baby's heart to you. So it was scary, but we went on our first few dates and totally fell in love. Probably within the first month that we were together.
Yeah.
And then our relationship moved very fast. So we got engaged 3 months later. Got engaged, started planning our wedding. We were totally just in this guru of so in love with each other. And I think with that being said, he wanted to be a dad so bad. He already loved being a stepdad. Him and my son have a great relationship, and they have from the start. But I knew he wanted his own baby. So I think there was a whole nother excitement. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm so in love with this man, and he's the godly man I've been praying for, and he does all the right things, and he's not an alcoholic, and it just, everything seemed to be fitting in the right places. So 3 months in, we get engaged, and we immediately start talking about having kids. And I was like, man, I got pregnant so easy with my first, like, it's going to be easy, you know? And so we kind of got to this conversation, was like, well, let's just have a baby before we get married. And then get married and then have more babies. And that was just our train of thought. I think just being so in love and just knowing like we're going to be together forever anyways. So let's just go for it. So our first month of trying, got pregnant.
Oh, wow. So this while you're planning your wedding?
Yes.
You get pregnant while you're planning your wedding?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was month 4 of us. We got engaged at month 3, and month 4 we were pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So very fast, but found out I was pregnant. I think it was like just this overwhelming of like, oh my goodness, like he's going to be a dad. This is all he's ever wanted. Like we're going to get married. Like we are going to have this perfect and beautiful life. And with that being said, I think that there was a lot of emotion going on. I think it was like my heart was just like so full and giving him a baby, the baby that he wanted so bad. And but then after that high came down, it was like, holy moly. I have been with him for three to 4 months. We just got engaged. And I was like, what was I thinking? Like trying to have a baby before we got married, like, and all the enemy just kind of started creeping in on me and my heart. And it was, you know, what if this doesn't work out? Like I'm going to be a single mom to 2 kids. Not only, you know, I'm not going to have one baby daddy, but I'm going to have 2 baby daddies. And like, I was already struggling with having one. And so the enemies just slowly started creeping in my mind. And my husband was so just thrilled and high on life with all of this. And I remember it was during fire season. So he had left for 3 or 4 nights to go fight fires. And in pregnancy, you can find yourself hitting some really low lows. No matter how good the highs are, the lows are really low, and they can be really lonely. And so I found myself in a 3 to 4 day period of feeling really lonely and really scared because I was by myself and the enemy was just attacking me. I found myself again worrying about what my dad was going to think. If my dad,
he didn't know yet?
No, he didn't know. So it's just me and Bennett at this point. And I was terrified because my dad, I could just like hear him in the back of my head, like, you just get married first. You just got engaged. And like, here you are rushing to have kids. And not that you made this mistake before, but like, that was hard on you, Mikaylah. What are you doing? And so I was terrified of that. I was terrified of judgment from other people. I was really like, oh my gosh, people are going to be like, Mikaylah, you've been with this guy for 3 months and here you are. And so, so I went through this really dark place, and the top thing the enemy and whoever was putting in my mind was you need to fix this problem. This is now a problem. And I didn't feel like it was something to be celebrated.
Yeah.
And so I found myself on my phone Googling, I can remember I was like 7 weeks, 4 days. And I found myself sitting on my couch by myself at midnight Googling, how long do you have to take an abortion pill?
Okay.
How to tell your husband that you're not ready to have a baby. And this was almost kind of a sickening feeling to me because I had tried to have have the baby.
Yeah.
We were trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I just felt like God was like, you literally were wanting this, asked for
Yes.
this. I
Yeah.
felt like God had given me the blessing of it, and getting pregnant so soon.
Yeah.
And then it turned into like, now you don't want the gift that I gave you.
Yeah.
And so I was feeling really sick to my stomach, but very much like, no, this is what I need to do. Like, we'll try
Yes.
again after I get married. Like, we
Yeah.
can't do it right now. God will forgive me. He'll bless me again. I
Yeah.
know God will bless me again. Like, God's got me. And so after going through that little couple days of just Googling and like calling doctors and
Yeah.
like trying to do everything behind my husband's back because I did not want him to know. And in the back of my head, I was thinking like, okay, like I'll just take the pill and then I'll tell my husband I had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And like, I don't ever want him, because he's totally was against abortion. And,
Yeah.
so I'm like, I'm just going to like do it the backhand way and he'll never know. No one will ever know.
Yeah.
I'll be the only one to
Yeah.
know.
Because you haven't even shared it with the
'Cause
public
no
yet or
one
anything.
knows.
Yeah.
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 And so, and then my husband got home from fires, and I think I don't know if it was like him being home again or what it was, but I just kind of was like, you know what, Mikaylah, you did this once, you can do
Yeah.
it again. You're a great mom. So no matter what happens to you and your fiance,
Yeah.
you're going to be a great mom and you're going to rock it. And so I was like, okay, God,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep this baby. I'm going to raise this baby. I'm going to get married to my husband. Like you're
Yeah.
going to be here through it all. And I know everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so it took a turning point after that week. And then it was back to exciting and baby clothes shopping and, just starting to figure out how we were going to tell the families and,
Yeah.
started telling the families, and everyone was so excited for us. And then I was just like, see, Mikaylah, like your dad wasn't going to be mad. He's excited. And like
Yeah.
his family isn't going to be disappointed. And you guys, like, they're excited. And,
Yeah.
and then things just were so perfect. You just feel like you're on top of the world. You were like, man, why did I even feel that way? To like, holy moly, I'm on the top of Mount Everest and I'm
Yeah.
unstoppable.
Yeah.
And then we went in for our 13-week ultrasound appointment. We had found out the gender of the baby at 10 weeks, so we knew we were having a boy.
Okay.
Started picking out names, and we were so excited to go see the little guy, Bennett's first ultrasound on the 13-week mark. We go into the appointment. We're all giddy. We're excited to see this little baby, and I walk into the ultrasound room, lay on the bed. She does the gel and the little odometer thing. And as soon as they put it on me, you can see the baby right there. And the doctor doesn't say a word. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like waiting for like the baby to move around. Cause I remember like with my first baby and he was jumping around on the monitor at that point and he looked like a baby. And so I'm sitting there staring at this screen and nothing's happening, and I'm like, oh, like maybe the baby's sleeping, and so I just start like poking at my belly, and I could just see the doctor like looked over at me because he knew that I was like trying to wake up the baby. He doesn't say anything, and he says, I'll be right back. Well, this was the ultrasound tech, so she's like, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab your doctor. And I remember grabbing my husband has no idea this is his first ultrasound.
Yeah.
And I remember instantly being like, holy moly, like this isn't right.
Yeah.
Like,
Something's wrong.
she didn't say a word. Like she's going to go grab the doctor. And so I grabbed my husband's hand and instantly I'm like, okay, like, have I had any symptoms the past couple? I instantly was thinking
Yeah.
the worst. And so I like try to relive the last week and I'm like, you know what? Like, I haven't been sick like I was like this last
Mm.
week. I've had more energy, and so as I'm waiting for the doctor to come in, I'm like going through everything in my head, and then I'm like, gosh, like, okay, I ate Taco Bell, I ate hamburger, like I'm just going through everything.
Yeah.
And the doctor comes back in and he puts the ultrasound back on my belly and has it right on the screen, and he looks at me and says, Mikaylah, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat.
Mm.
And I think
Uh,
in that moment, I was like, the first thing I thought was I was being punished.
yeah.
Um, I didn't quite understand. I've heard of miscarriages, but I was such a healthy 20-year-old that I already
Yeah.
had a perfect pregnancy before,
Yeah.
and so when he was like talking to me and saying, Mikaylah, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat, I was like, can you repeat? I quite
Yeah.
literally don't know what you're telling me right now because
Yeah.
I've had it. Like, how could this be? And I just remember him holding the thing on my belly and looking at the screen, and he said, "This is where the heart's supposed to be beating, and your baby stopped growing 2 days ago. So you're
Uh,
13 weeks, but your baby stopped growing at 12 weeks 4 days, or
mm.
and so I instantly in my head, I think I went numb for a second. I just was staring at the screen. I couldn't look at my husband because I think my husband was trying to process, but he was a
Yeah.
mess too. But he was trying to stay strong for me, and he's like holding my hand, and
Mm.
my husband's like, "Well, can you do the other ultrasound where you like put it in, just to
Yeah.
make sure?" And he's sitting there like, there's no way, like she's healthy, and how could this have happened? And the whole time my husband's trying to talk to the doctor to navigate it.
Yeah.
The doctor's like, it's 1 in 4, it happens, and you guys can try again. But the whole time they're having this conversation, I'm sitting there and I'm like, God is punishing me. God's
Mm.
punishing me because I didn't want this baby. I was going
Yeah.
to abort this baby and tell my husband I was having a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And so the whole time I'm just sitting there and I'm like, God's punishing you. You said you wanted it. So now he's like, here's what
Yeah.
you wanted, Mikaylah. Like, here it is on the screen. Which was so,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and in that too, like you're all by yourself.
mhm,
And I noticed that when you talk about your different points of your life where you're like
mhm,
really struggling or whatever,
mhm,
you're completely alone by yourself in
mhm.
your head,
Yeah.
processing through things,
Mhm.
feeling the things that you feel without ever like really expressing it out loud.
Yeah.
So you must have been extremely alone in
Oh,
that
yeah.
moment,
Mhm.
feeling punished and like, well, that's what you get
Yeah.
because you had these thoughts,
Yeah.
you played it out. Well, you got what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly. And feeling
Ugh,
punished and like feeling guilty because I'm like, because, I was feeling like I was being punished, and now it's hurting my husband. And now, like, my husband's
mm,
seeing it firsthand, like his first ultrasound he's ever been to. Like,
yeah.
you don't pray that on anybody. You don't pray
Yeah.
that on any excited mom or any
Yeah.
excited dad. And so, yeah, so we're leaving the room, and as soon as we walk out of the ultrasound room, I just broke down.
Yeah.
I just was like, and I couldn't tell my husband why I was breaking down. I just was like, we'll try again, and then I felt like an unworthy woman almost
Mm,
because it was like I can't hold like all we wanted to do was get married and have a perfect baby, and my
yeah.
body's rejecting babies, and I can't give my husband. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
is he gonna want to stay married to me if this keeps happening? Like, he wants to have kids, and what's if something's wrong with my body, or
Mhm.
maybe it is just being punished. And so for a couple months there, I was on my couch. I quit my job.
Mm.
My husband fully had to support us, which he was okay with. He knew that I was in a completely dark place, but he didn't know the full extent
Yeah.
of why I was in that dark place, and it was a lot of guilt and being mad at God,
Mhm.
because I was like, gosh, like it was only a week period that I thought about doing that, God, but then I decided I wanted to keep this
Yeah.
baby. I decided I
Yeah.
wanted to love this baby, and
Mm.
why would you do that.
Yeah.
And so I was mad at God. I stopped going to church with my husband. And now it turned into a very like unhealthy of I have to get pregnant again. I have to try again. And
And what are you doing with your hands? Were you like
oh
Googling
man.
like how long do I have to
Yes.
wait after a
Yes.
miscarriage to like have, to get pregnant? Like, or what were you Googling? Cause you were like doing your hands.
Yeah.
So were you
Well,
Googling stuff?
actually, before I get into that portion of it, I want to share the portion of actually going through the miscarriage. So I left the office and he said, Mikaylah, you're just going to pass the baby by yourself, like on your own. There's no need to do a DNC. So at that point I did go home and I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this going to feel like? And so I'm looking at all these different pages of women that have gone through it. And I'm trying to like mentally prepare myself.
Yeah.
So this is what it's like to have a miscarriage and this is what happens. So 3 to 4 days after I left the doctor's office, I started like bleeding. But it didn't feel anything much more than like what a normal like menstrual cycle would feel like. And so I remember me and my husband got in bed and it was almost like you're having an outer body experience. Like, you're like, where this blood is coming from, what's happening with your body, and you literally, or I was like, could not face it. And so I wanted to be in my room by myself and deal with this by myself. I didn't want my husband to see it. I didn't want anyone to know about it. And so I end up going to sleep and about midnight rolls around and I just kind of woke up in this excruciating pain. Now like labor pain. And I didn't know this before, but once you're past, I think it is 12 weeks, you're supposed to get a DNC. And so I'm in the bathroom by myself. I did not want to wake my husband. I did not want him to see anything that was happening because I did the Google on it and I've seen the pictures that women post, like this is what it might look like. And so I was like, I'm going to lock my door and I'm going to do this by myself. And it got so bad and I started bleeding so bad and just crying so hysterically through the process. And I remember sitting there on my bathroom floor and still being mad at God. I'm like, God, why are you making me go through this right now? Like, I know what's about to pass through my body. Like, how could you? And back to like, I only thought this for a couple days. Like, how could you? Like, why would you want me to go through this pain? And this isn't what my plan was. Like, why are you backing my plan? And so I actually ended up passing out on the bathroom floor from blood loss. And my husband had to break into the bathroom floor and called 911. And it ended up being this big traumatic event in my life. And this whole time this event's going down, I just felt like God was like, this is what you wanted. This is what you were saying you wanted. And you didn't want this baby. And let me show you what this can look like. So I'm getting wheeled out into the ambulance and I just remember my husband's crying and my blood pressure is like 60/30 and everyone's like freaking out because I'm losing all this blood. And I just remember the ambulance door shutting. And when that ambulance door shut, I was looking straight out onto my street. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this wasn't God. This wasn't God. I'm not being punished. And that was the point where I just was like, you know what, Mikaylah, like this happens. You did ask for this, but this isn't God saying I'm punishing you and I'm taking your baby away. This is God's timing, but I didn't look at it in a way of a punishment. And so I got to the hospital and I think that was my turning point of like, it was almost like God came in and he was like, do not give up. Do not give up right now. You are not going to lose so much blood that something crazy is going to happen to you. You're going to go to this hospital. You're going to get a DNC. They're going to finish the process for you. And then you're going to come out of this knowing, like, this was not a punishment. Maybe a personal lesson, in my opinion, is kind of how I still think of it. Not a lesson of like, you shouldn't have asked or wanted an abortion, but it just kind of showed me like how valuable pregnancy is. And like,
Mm.
not everyone can get pregnant. And just because you get pregnant once and have a perfect pregnancy, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
It could be, but couldn't be.
Yeah.
So that was pretty traumatic. So then fast forward to what I'm Googling on my phone, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, okay, like God's got me. I know God's got me.
Yeah.
Like this is God's plan. Like he knows I'm meant to be a mom. He knows that I regret ever researching how to do an abortion, and he
Yeah.
knows like where my heart is, and that this is what I want. So it went on to like this very unhealthy sunken hole of I had my husband on fertility pills because I was like, okay, like I had a miscarriage because maybe there's something wrong with your sperm or something wrong with my
Mm.
eggs, or maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't having enough protein. Like
Mm.
it's got to be something that we can fix. And so I went down this really horrid rabbit hole of trying to pump my husband full of vitamins and supplements, and like pumping myself with them, and taking every fertility pill on the market.
Yes.
Getting my blood drawn weekly from doctors saying like, if there's something wrong with me, I need you to figure it out so we can fix it so I can get pregnant, because
Yeah.
I have to get
Yeah.
pregnant.
Yes.
And yeah, so a couple months.
And were you guys married at this time?
No.
Like, okay, still not married.
This is
So
all-
okay,
yeah,
this is all like
before
we're
the
just
wedding.
dating
Yep.
here, but we're
Mhm.
engaged. But
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so we got pregnant in October. Miscarriage was like end of December.
Yeah.
We didn't end up getting married till that July.
Okay.
So I was ordering huge boxes of pregnancy tests off of Amazon,
Mm.
ovulation tests. Got to the point where I was texting my husband at work, like, I just got a fire hot ovulation test. I need you to drive home right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was very much like I was unhealthy,
Yeah.
like
Like obsessed.
obsessed.
Totally obsessed.
Oh
Like
my
it was your
goodness.
number one focus, your
Mhm.
number one priority.
Yeah.
And what the driving force of that
Yeah.
was like kind of like you failed or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
and now I need to make up for it.
Yeah,
Like
mhm.
I need to make this happen.
Yes,
I
yeah.
need to replace. Did you think of like replacing that baby? Like what was like the driving force? Like why so obsessed about it?
Yeah. So not like replacing that baby. Like, I don't know what it was about that first miscarriage. All my miscarriages hit me very hard. But that first miscarriage was kind of like, I feel like that's when I really was like, okay, God, there's got to be a heaven, because I need to see that baby again one day. And I think
Mm,
that's what got me through to it. And
okay.
so like there was such a hard drive from it, because I was like, this is what I want. And I think it was like, why did I ever think that I didn't want this? And so I needed to
Mm,
prove to myself, like, this is what you wanted, and
yeah.
this is what you want, and you're going to be a great mom.
Yeah.
You're going to, your husband's going to have kids. You guys are going to have kids together. And so it just turned into like an insanity of like, you can have babies, Mikaylah. Don't think you can't have babies. And,
Mm,
and it was like, you've had one before, you can do it again. So it was almost like a game with myself. Like,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Well, and also like, so I think
Mhm.
there's a couple things in there because you did feel like you heard the voice of the Lord. You just internally,
Yeah.
when the ambulance door shuts, like,
Yeah.
don't give up.
Yeah.
This is, and the Lord's like
Mhm.
encouraging you, like, hey, at some point this is gonna happen. But
Yeah.
you were like, boom, let me take that word. I'm gonna make it
Yes.
happen now.
Yeah.
But that kicks into like your whole
Mhm.
like competitive thing, like with
Yeah.
soccer and
Yeah.
sports and all that stuff. Like
Mhm.
you are competitive. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you tell me I can do it. Boom, I'm gonna go get
Yes.
this thing. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's some of that with like your own personality,
Yeah.
but the drive was you were gonna prove it to
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
that you could do it.
Yeah.
Was there any other part that was like, I need to make sure I can keep this guy? What if I can't give him a baby? So I'm gonna
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure this happens. Like, is there some of that in there?
Yeah. I think that came more so after my second miscarriage is
Okay.
because at first I was like, okay, it's 1 in 4, like things happen. But we're gonna do it right this time, and we're gonna make sure we're taking everything we need to take,
Yeah.
and make sure we have the right diet. I'm gonna make sure my body's really healthy. And so feeling the way of I felt like I was failing my husband, and I was not scared that my husband would leave me, but scared my husband would leave me because he wanted nothing more than to have his own babies.
Okay.
And so yeah, like after that second time come around, I was obsessing. I was taking pregnancy tests. Probably I was spending an immense amount of money on ovulation tests and pregnancy tests, and to the point
Okay.
where my husband's like, we need to figure this out. Like, you are literally on your period and you're taking pregnancy tests. And
Wow.
it just got to the point where I was like,
Yeah.
well, like, what if this is spotting? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's not spotting. Like,
Yeah.
like he knew that my mental was not
Yeah.
in the right spot. I was
Yeah.
obsessing over being pregnant. And so pregnancy test 6 times a day, finally got pregnant again.
Mhm.
We were so excited. We were like, oh my goodness, like, God answered our prayers, and like,
Yeah.
and this time it's gonna go perfect. We've been doing all the right things.
Yeah.
There's nothing that could go wrong. And I already was that 1 in 4. I'm not gonna be that 1 in 4 again.
Yeah.
So that miscarriage happened way earlier on. So I got a positive pregnancy test. And then after I got my first positive pregnancy test, I will say I continued to take pregnancy tests every single day,
Oh, man.
until my first doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
because I wanted to make sure that my line was staying strong, and like
Yeah.
I was really paying attention to all my symptoms every day.
Yeah.
If there was a burst of energy I was concerned.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, like I just had burst of energy to clean the bedroom and I'm not feeling sick right now. Like something's wrong.
Mhm.
And so I'd constantly be texting my husband at work, like, I feel good right now and I feel like something's wrong. So I'm going to go to the
Mm.
hospital. I'm going to have him
Yeah.
check the baby on the monitor just to make sure. Um, that pregnancy lasted 8 weeks.
Mm.
And before we ever got to our first appointment, when I was taking my pregnancy tests at home, they started getting fate about 7 weeks.
Mm.
And so I ended up going into my doctor's at 8 weeks. Um, she had put me on the monitor and she said, Mikaylah, your baby does
Mm.
not have a heartbeat.
Mm.
She's like, I don't know why. She's like, it happens. It's 1 in 4. And I'm just sitting
Yeah.
there like, I was already that 1 in 4. Like,
Yeah.
and so then back to God, I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on?
Yeah, like I'm doing everything right and
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
And even though you're doing everything right
Yeah.
and you're trying to control the whole situation by, making sure you're taking the pregnancy test every single day, you're like doing all this stuff and you go to the hospital every single time. So even doing all of that stuff,
Yeah.
you still can't
Yeah.
seem to like carry this baby
Yeah.
to full term. So
Mhm.
how many miscarriages did you have total?
So total we had 5.
Oh, wow.
I had, so with my second son, we had 3 miscarriages before we had him.
Oh, wow.
And then we got pregnant right after our wedding. So we ended up having 3 miscarriages before the wedding. They were all between like 6 and 8 weeks besides the first one.
Mhm.
So it was just again and again disappointment. And instead of getting closer to God in that time, we both drifted away.
Yeah.
We were so beyond ourselves of why this could
Yeah.
happen. And the doctor was like, there's really no reason to this. So we
Mhm.
end up getting married, and I was like I had said before, I was terrified my husband was not gonna, especially after 3 miscarriages. I mean,
Yeah.
in my head, I'm like, he's got to be second guessing this. Like
Yeah.
he's about to marry me, and I clearly can't hold his babies.
Mm.
But me and my husband had the conversation. He's like, I'm here through and through. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's just me, you, and the son that I had at
Yeah.
first, I'm here. We got this, and God's got us. He's like, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what's going on, but we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna keep trying. And
Mhm.
he's like, I remember he grabbed my face in bed one night because I just told him, I was like, I don't even think I have an inch of faith left in me. I mean, it was heartbreak after heartbreak. And this
Yeah.
whole time, it was constant obsession about being pregnant. And then I'd get
Mhm.
pregnant and be so excited. And then it was a heartbreak. And then it was
Yeah.
obsession, and then pregnant. And then it was just my body and my hormones was just
Yeah.
like, girl, this is like a sign. You should probably give up, is how my body was feeling.
Yeah.
And so we get married, and I tell my husband 3 months after our wedding, I'm like, I really want to try again. Because at first I told him, I think I'm done. Like, I was like, I'm tired. I was like, I have my son. We can raise him together. Everything's gonna be fine. But I was like, I'm done. And I told him, I was like, if that like makes you change your mind about our
Mhm.
marriage, like I respect that. But my body is tired and I
Yeah.
quite literally have no faith left inside me.
Yeah.
I was empty.
Well,
Yeah.
it reminds me of a scripture that says, hope deferred makes
Mm-hmm.
the heart sick.
Yeah.
Because you got hopeful
Mm-hmm.
so many times, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
hopeful, like, I'm pregnant, we're going to have a baby, everything's
Mm-hmm.
going to be great. And then to have a miscarriage and then to get hopeful again, and
Mm-hmm.
yay,
Yeah.
and you had that 3 times
Mm-hmm.
before even having your first son with
Yeah.
him. And so, or your second son together, your second son, his first son,
Yeah.
you you were hopeful, and then to
Mm-hmm.
have that hope stolen from
Yeah.
you, because
So many
it's
times.
like when you have a miscarriage, it probably feels like something is stolen from
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
A life is stolen from
Mm-hmm.
you. And so hope deferred makes the heart sick. So
Yeah.
at that point, you were to the place where your heart was sick.
Yep.
Your faith was seriously lacking and
Yes.
your heart was sick. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's understandable that you'd be like, oh man, if you're rethinking the marriage, then I understand,
Yeah.
but I can't do it again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you decided, okay, never mind, I can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have your second. So during that pregnancy of your son that was actually born,
Yeah.
was it just an amazing experience? Did you enjoy being pregnant, or were you just like scared as crap? Just like all the same stuff you were struggling with before?
Oh my goodness. It was all the same stuff, but it actually went up to a more intense level because um when I had told my husband I'm ready to try again a couple months after our marriage, he said, "Why don't you?" Because we chose a different doctor because I didn't want the same doctor that I had with my other son's
Yeah.
dad, and I wanted it to be a fresh new experience.
Yeah.
But my husband was like, "Why don't you just go back to the doctor that you had your first son with?" And he's like, "You really liked her, and don't worry about me if that's the doctor that
Yeah.
advocates for you, like." And so I went in there and I was like, "Hey, this is what's been happening to me the past year and a half. I am
Mm.
tired. I'm losing hope that this is even possible for me again.
Mhm.
Is there any tests that you can run on me to see
Mm.
like what's going on?" So she ran tests and she found a blood clotting disorder.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so which was a glimpse of faith because I'm like, oh my goodness, like I don't know if that's the exact reason why I was having those miscarriages, but
Mhm.
maybe this is like something that could help, the next
Mhm.
time I try to get pregnant. And so with that blood clotting disorder, she's like, okay, if you're gonna start trying to get pregnant, and at this point I'm really excited again. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like man, this is something. Like I have something to do to
Yeah.
help me. And so she's like, you're gonna have to take shots in your stomach every single day.
Wow.
So that was rough, but I will say, I think her giving me any kind of diagnosis filled my body with faith again.
Mm.
Um, and so I was just like, I don't care. Like I'll do 10 injections a day in my stomach if that's what it means that I'm going to have a healthy pregnancy. And so,
Mhm.
she starts me on these shots and then, I start tracking my ovulation again.
Mm.
But this time I tried to do it, with more patience and
Yeah.
just was like, let go and let God this time. I was like, I can't sit there and obsess and feel sick about it.
Yeah.
So I just was like, let go and let God. Was taking my injections. We got pregnant. And I was high risk pregnancy with the blood clotting. So I had an ultrasound at like 5 weeks, 8 weeks. I had them like every other week.
Yeah.
Which did help with my anxiety.
Mhm.
But the moment that I actually got pregnant, I was doing my shots, but I still was like, man, this is nothing compared to my first pregnancy. Like
Yeah.
I was hiding taking pregnancy tests from my husband because I didn't want him to like
Yeah.
think that I was still acting crazy.
Yeah.
But I was doing that. I was really watching my diet.
Mm.
And I think I went when I was pregnant with my second son, I went to the hospital probably once a week until I was 20 weeks along.
Okay.
Because I would get myself into this mindset of something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong constantly.
Yeah.
I'd be driving down the road and my head would be like go to the hospital, get your baby checked. And I
Yeah.
don't know why. And so I'm like, oh, that's my mom instinct. I need to go.
Yeah. Or it's God
Yeah,
talking
it's
to
God
me.
talking to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so I was there once a week at least until
Mm.
I was 20 weeks along. And at that 20-week period, I probably went into the hospital every 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
But they start moving more in that concept. So I feel like once I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can feel him moving. My guard wasn't down, but it was lower. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like at least I know if he's kicking me, like
Yeah.
he's his heart's beating. That was a really rough pregnancy.
Emotionally. Just
Emotionally,
emotionally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even kind of physically doing the shots.
Yeah.
Once my belly started rounding out, the shots got a lot more painful.
Oh.
And so it looked a lot different than my first pregnancy.
Yeah.
My first pregnancy was so smooth and it's just crazy because it was like I remember when I was pregnant with Lincoln or even going through my miscarriages, I'm like, how is it when you want something so bad, it's so hard to get, or there's a more
Mm.
difficult road to get there?
Yeah.
But when you're not trying or you're not planning something, you're not trying and it like happens to you, it's like, the most easy. And
Yeah.
that's how I felt. I'm like, it's just everything was so easy with my first and that wasn't a mistake, but it wasn't planned.
Yeah.
And so, but now that I'm trying so hard to plan it, it's like everything is so hard. It's like taking the hard road every step of the way. Every
Yeah.
week was trying to navigate it. So we have Lincoln and
he's baby number 2.
and he is baby number 2. We have
Okay.
baby number 2 and it was just like I remember the second he was born. It was another one of those moments where like the doctor puts him on my chest and I felt like I could breathe again. I couldn't breathe for the past 2 years.
Like you were holding your breath.
Yes, like I was
Yeah.
holding my breath like the whole time through my miscarriages and through that whole pregnancy, it was like I seriously felt so suffocated.
Yeah.
And the second I had the baby in my chest, it was like I could breathe
Yeah.
and like I could thank God.
Yeah.
And even through that process, I don't even feel like I gave a lot of like, I didn't thank God for giving me Lincoln until a certain point.
Until like you had him on you, because you're
yes.
like, I don't know if it's gonna. Yeah,
Yes.
like okay, now I'll thank him
Yes.
because it actually happened, but
Yeah,
you
like,
weren't sure. Yeah.
No, because I was scared too. I was scared to get my hopes up. I was scared to be
Mhm.
like, oh God, like you're so good and you're blessing me and like and thank you for this. Like I literally couldn't get those words out
Yeah.
of my body until I was holding my son. And then I
Mm.
said, like, I just remember being like, thank God. And I looked at my husband and I said, thank God. And his delivery was rough. I almost had to get an emergency C-section.
Wow.
And so with all that, there's a lot of emotion with that. It's like, is
Yeah.
this where I'm going to lose my baby? Is at the very
Oh
end?
gosh.
And so
Yeah.
I'm like a mess bawling. And that's it just like all kind of led up to like, God, like I just went through this horrible pregnancy, but we made
Yeah.
it all the way. And now he's not breathing and the doctors are trying to rush me in. And like,
Mm.
and so, it just was like this crazy moment of
Yeah.
like, okay,
Is he gonna get you all the way here and
Yes.
then
and then pull it, you
Yeah.
know? And then again, like, is that a punishment thing? And like, so all this stuff is going through my head. And in reality, it's just the devil.
Yeah.
And, going back on my pregnancy, I wish like I wasn't letting the devil in as much as I did.
Yeah.
I wish I was healthier for not only my baby and my body, like I'm sure he felt every ounce of stress that I felt.
Yeah.
I just wasn't able to kick the devil off my shoulder.
Yeah.
I kept him there because it's happened before and it might happen again. And
Yes.
and he was, and so yeah.
But in that, when I look back at your life, like you weren't in church.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming no one was discipling you.
Yeah.
No one was mentoring you. You didn't have spiritual warfare
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many things that a new believer needs to learn
Yeah.
and needs to be guided through. And that can come through mentoring, that can come through being discipled, through going to church or reading reading the Bible, like, but you don't know what you don't know. So you're literally like, that's the best you got. However, you were able to have the ears to hear when the Lord was speaking to you. And there was clear, he probably was speaking to you more than that, but there's those clear defining moments in your life where you're like, God straight up talked to me like, oh my gosh, I felt him. I knew it was him. And it's like his voice carries you through for a long time, but still you didn't have the foundation of like knowledge of the word or anyone discipling you to help you through that. Because those are things like we don't just naturally know, like that's the devil, that's God, that's my voice. This is what we do in hard times. This is how we forgive and we surrender and all of that. So, I mean, you did pretty good without any of that knowledge. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I love your stories, like how tragic it is. Like, I don't love that part of it, but like all the things that you've learned and all the things that you've experienced, like no wonder you had anxiety. No wonder you had the fear of death. No wonder you had depression going through that. No wonder you were laser focused on getting pregnant again and all of that stuff. Like that's a lot of trauma to experience. Most people, it's like you hear people that they have the childhood trauma, which I know you have some of that too, but it's like you had this trauma that was in your early 20s. And that was like the foundation, for lack of better words, or the beginning of your relationship with your husband. Like that had to have put a major toll on your relationship, being so focused on getting pregnant or having babies or, all that stuff. And then with all the loss, like that's a lot of trauma. So fast forward to now you do have 3 babies that are living, 3 kids, 3 boys, but you also have these 5 miscarriages that you had. So had you had all of them, you would have 8 children now. And you had briefly said, like, God, basically like, I need this to be real, that heaven is real and that you're real so that I can see these babies again. Is that your perspective, that all 5 of those children are now with the Lord in heaven?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And kind of going back to our wedding day, I have a tattoo of a butterfly. One's an angel wing and the other is a butterfly wing. I got it a week before my wedding. And I remember I obviously grieving my miscarriages and like thinking about like, oh, like if I could be pregnant right now or, whatever. And I remember just like talking to God and being like, can you show me that my baby, like my babies are here today. And me and Bennett are standing up at the altar and there's actually a butterfly sitting on our tray, our bread and wine tray. And we have the pastor standing there and my photographer zoomed in on it, right up there with us. And I think that was a huge moment. Like God was like, they're here. Like they're with me, they're here. And so I don't know, like, I just feel like sometime back when I was going through it, I was like, gosh, is heaven even for real? Is God even for real? Like, I don't even know what I believe in. I have all these hormones going on. And I just feel like God has such crazy ways of like showing up. And not showing up like when you're like, gosh, you need to show up right now. He's like, I'm here. I'm always here. And I'm going to show you that I'm here, but I'm going to show you in my way.
Totally.
And so,
and in a way that you actually understand, though, you knew what that meant, even though nobody else knew, you knew what that butterfly meant. That was God speaking to you through the butterfly, not that your child was reincarnated and is now a butterfly, because we got to be careful, because some people will be watching this and be like, yes, reincarnation. No, that was just God using a butterfly to show you, I'm right here with you and your babies are with me.
Yes.
That's
absolutely.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. But it's crazy, like through all of this. So like I had said, like after I had Lincoln, there wasn't a moment where I thanked God until he was on my chest. Well, I feel like even after I had thanked God, I still didn't know God and I was still worried of God. And because of all the things that have been taken from me and the trauma and so I remember when the first time we took Lincoln to church, was the first time, when you're in church and people are like, you'll know when you've given your life to God or when God's present, because like this crazy rush will go through your body. Well, I'd walk into church and I'd be like, what are these people talking about? Like these people are down on their knees and they're crying. And it wasn't till after I had that baby that I had tried so hard to get,
Yeah.
that I walked into that church with him. And I remember holding him in the church, and I never had this feeling before. And the pastor's up there preaching, and then worship's going, and my whole entire body just like, it's crazy. It was
Yeah.
crazy. Everything starts like tingling, and then all this emotion. And it was like God was right there. I could feel him right
Mm.
there. And he's like, I told you so. Like, I told you,
Yeah.
I'm always faithful.
Yeah.
And here you are in church with your
Yeah.
baby, your healthy baby. And so I think at that point I was just like, okay, God, like,
Yeah.
I'm giving you him. I'm giving you my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you're for real. I know you're faithful. I know it's not by my plan, but by yours. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to stay faithful to your plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to have hope in your plan. And then it wasn't until, we ended up getting pregnant with Dutton, and we had a miscarriage right after Lincoln, but me and my husband knew we wanted to have kids back to back.
Yeah.
So we had that miscarriage. That was very early on miscarriage, but same thing. I just was like, God, I know you're faithful. You've done it before.
Yeah.
You're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And so that one, it hit me hard. All of them hit hard, but I
Totally.
think that it gets to a point where it's like, as long as you can hold faith and have faith in it, God's going to make it work out.
And you also, because you
Mhm.
already had the understanding that
Yes.
your other babies were with him. So
Yeah.
you knew that baby. And
Yeah.
that gives you hope that, yeah, I might go through a heck of a life while I'm here.
Right.
Like my life might suck in moments,
Yeah.
or for periods of time while I'm here.
Yeah.
But eternity is coming.
Yeah.
Heaven is real.
Yep.
God is real. And
Yep.
any loss I've experienced here, I will have it redeemed when I am in heaven.
Mhm.
So when you are a Christian, like
Yeah.
that is a very deep knowledge, even though like as Christians, we can get mad at God and we
Yeah.
can blame God. Like I've definitely had those seasons of my life,
Yeah.
but to know that someday
Yeah.
heaven is going to be real for
Yeah.
us and we're going to experience it and we're going to see those babies.
Yeah. And it did. It made going through like those 2 miscarriages after Lincoln. It was like I was sad and I cried, and like it was horrible. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it was like that same thing that you said, I'm gonna see those babies again one
Yeah.
day. And through all this, my miscarriages, my brother had passed away. And I think with him passing away, knowing that he was up there with my babies too,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was like this overwhelming, like, God's got them and my brother's got them. My older brother always wanted to be a dad, and it was almost like a sense of, okay, God, I just had this miscarriage, give this baby to my brother. Like,
Aw.
my brother's gonna be the best dad.
Wow.
And so now when I think about my babies, I think about my brother, and I think about them, and
Yeah.
and they're waiting for me to join
Yeah.
one day, and they're waiting for my husband, and
Yes.
my other kids. And but I will say there is a surreal moment of like surrendering yourself to God and giving yourself to God, and then giving your kids to God.
Seriously.
Holy moly. Like,
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that moment.
Yeah.
That moment hit me when I was 33 weeks pregnant with Dutton. And
he's your littlest baby.
yes,
Okay.
33 weeks pregnant with our littlest. Lincoln had just had his first birthday, my second, just had his first birthday. And a few days later, me and Bennett are at home, and he's like feeling a little warm, but nothing too like to be concerned about. So we put him to bed, and about midnight he starts crying. So my husband goes in there and grabs him, and he's like, holy moly, like he is
Yeah.
so hot. I'm like, okay, go get more Tylenol. Well, I didn't realize that we had used the last dosage of Tylenol. So I'm like, okay, honey, like you run to the store. I'm going to put a cold rag on his head. So my husband leaves, and I have my second in my bed, and his body temperature went from like 102 to 105 within
Wow.
seconds. And so he starts having a seizure, and I'm home alone. My oldest is with his dad, and Bennett had just gone to the store. So I'm home alone, and my baby is having a seizure on the bed. So I immediately call 911. I've never seen it or
Yeah.
experienced it in my life.
Yeah.
I didn't even really understand what was happening. It took me
Yeah.
a second to like, okay, this is happening. Like,
Yeah.
and so I call
Scary.
911. Yeah. And so I'm freaking out. I'm very pregnant. I'm home alone with my son.
Yeah.
I just remember like doing everything I could. I'm like yelling at the dispatcher on the phone, like, you need to get someone here right now. Like,
Yeah.
this is a baby that's having
Yeah.
a seizure. And it felt like it took 40 minutes for the
Yeah.
cop to get there, but really it was 3. And he ended up having a grand mal seizure. And so he gets rushed to the emergency room, and we're in the emergency room, and he starts having another grand mal seizure. So he goes up to ICU. And I just remember, like, there's like a thing about being a mom that no one can do it better than you can do it. And like, no one can protect my baby better than I can. Like, I am Mama Bear. I'm like, no one can do it better.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the hospital, and I'm just like completely beside myself. My baby's got tubes running down his throat. They had to sedate him because he wouldn't stop having seizures. There was moments that doctors walked out and they said, he's had 3 grand mal seizures over 15 minutes. I don't know what his brain activity is going to look like. And we don't know if he's going to be paralyzed. And so I have doctors coming in and out of, the room saying all this crazy stuff while my baby is sedated on the table and my husband's holding his hand. And I think there was like a surreal moment of like, I can't control this. And like I felt, and before that no one can protect my babies better than I can. And I remember in that moment, and this is probably my biggest testimony with God. I remember in that moment, the doctor had came in and said, we don't think he's going to have any brain activity. We're going to do a test on his brain right now. And they started hooking him up, and I walked out to the parking garage, and I fell on my knees. Like, I literally had no feeling left in my legs. I fell on my knees at 3 a.m. at the hospital, and I was screaming up at the sky. And I said, God, I told you I got my babies before, but you have my babies now. I cannot control this. I cannot do it better than you can do it. I cannot protect better than you can protect. I can't heal the way that you can heal.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you my babies. You were faithful. You gave, I had this baby. He's such a blessing. I thanked you for that, but I thanked you, but I didn't give him to you like I should have. And right now, like, God, I'm giving him to you.
Yeah.
And so
powerful.
that was just like a moment that I'll never forget in my life. Is like, it's just hard as a mom. Like, you want to have control of everything, and no one can do it better than you, but God can. God's he heals all. And so I'm screaming this out there in the driveway, and people are walking by, and I don't care. I'm just like, my baby
is fighting for his
is
life.
fighting for his life right now. God, take him into your hands. And so I go back into the room, and as I'm walking back in through the hospital, it was like a sense of relief. Like, it was almost like I wasn't so scared. I walked out of there crying, terrified, to screaming at the top of my lungs, God, take my baby, to walking back into the hospital calm and collected. Like, I felt better because I was just like, God's got him. I just yelled it to God. I know God's listening to me. I know he's here right now. And I felt him. It was almost like a calmness in my heart. Like, I hear you. Like, I've got him. Like, I'm the healer of all, and I'm gonna protect your baby. And so walking back into the hospital, I had a sense of calm. Like, it was I was like, I felt all the stress, not all the stress, but a lot of the stress just like left my body, because I'm like, it's not on me anymore. It's on God. And so that was an absolutely crazy experience.
It's powerful. And it's like, and I've had many of those moments in different ways. And people do not understand the power of surrendering everything to God, especially your greatest fear or your greatest prize, like the thing you don't want to have taken away. Like, because when you lay down your kid that hard to the Lord, what he gave you was peace. And the peace would have been no matter what happened.
Right.
And that's the crazy part, because a lot of people will do that to get the answer they want. instead of just, I am full on giving this kid to you.
Yeah.
And no matter what,
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Like no matter what, this kid's going to be okay because this kid belongs to you.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and I've experienced that in several different, but mostly like with a son who is a drug addict.
Yeah.
And I have had to lay him down so freaking hard that I am scream crying like what you're saying. I'm screaming at the enemy and I'm screaming out to Lord. I'm laying down like on the floor, like on my knees with my head to the floor, you know, my face to the floor and just bawling my face. I'm like, he is yours. You know, I'm giving him to you. But when I finally do get up off the ground, I'm like, I can face anything.
Yeah.
I can face anything.
Yeah.
I can do anything because I know God is with me.
Yeah.
And so for you to be able to go through all the tragedies that you've gone through and to know that God is with you and he was with you even before you fully surrendered him. But it's like, the Lord has this amazing way of working all things together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so even though we go through very hard things in this world, we go through trauma and we go through tragedy and we go through loss and pain and, you know, divorce or, you know, all the different shame we go through. It's like, even though I don't believe he makes those things happen, but they just happen because we are in a fallen world with sinful people and we're sinful ourselves. But the Lord has a way of taking a situation that is absolutely horrible, like your son having 3 grand mal seizures in a row at the hospital, you know, they're checking his brain activity. He had a way of taking such a horrible situation and making it to where you're now saying that is the most impactful moment you have ever had with the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's when you go back to, and it's like, instead of focusing on the seizures, you focus on, this is what the Lord did.
Yeah.
Because I gave it to him. And it's like, and he allowed that situation to bring you to a place where, it was horrible to be on your knees at 3 a.m. and, you know, 33 weeks pregnant and all this stuff happening. But in that moment, you finally learned how to get peace.
Right.
And the way we get peace is we give our lives fully to the Lord.
Yeah.
We give our kids fully to the Lord. And we recognize we are not God. And we recognize we're not the healer. We're not the great I am. Like you might be Mama Bear, but you ain't the great I am.
Yeah.
And so to really get to that place where you are like, this is who God is. And he is worthy of my trust.
Yeah.
He's worthy of my children. And I know that he can do it. You know, it's like, that's like the most amazing thing you could ever recognize. And I hope that with women who are listening to this, they'll get to that place prior to being in the emergency room and having to go out and hit their, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go through massive trauma to get to that place. Women could be listening to this right now like, wow, I've been totally like white knuckling my kids. I have been holding on to them for dear life and trying to protect them and trying to, you know, make everything happen, basically trying to be God or trying to have that savior complex. Wow, this is not really my job. I think I need to surrender my kids like Mikaylah did. I think I need to give them up prior to them being taken. Or if they have been taken, still give them up. Like they belong to the Lord first. Like the Lord said, I knit your child together in your mother's, in your womb. Like I'm the one who knit that child together. I'm the one. And that kid is now with me. That kid was always mine and will always be mine prior to him being yours. That's powerful.
And like with the peace overfilling, like in that moment, walking back into the hospital, it was like, it was peace, but it was also strength. Like I wasn't allowed. I couldn't be in that room when they were giving him a spinal tap and putting the tube down. I was sitting on the outside of the room with my dad, actually. My husband was in there through it all. And after I had went out and I had prayed to God and I surrendered myself to God, I surrendered my babies to God, I came back in with a new sort of strength. I was able to go straight into that room and hold my baby's hand. And exactly like you said, no matter what happens, he's going to be okay and I'm going to be okay. And so that was the mindset I went in with. So I'm like, whether he's paralyzed, you know, whatever the case is going to be, I know everything's going to be okay. And so I had peace and strength through that, where I was able to to be in there and be present with my baby.
Yeah.
Whether he was going to come out of this, if it were going to take a turn, I was going to
Yeah.
be there and I was going to be holding his hand,
Yeah.
which I couldn't do before. I didn't
Yeah.
have the strength to do
Yes.
before. And now it's like after surrendering my babies to God, I've done it to every single one of them right after
Good.
my third was born. In the hospital, remember being up at 2 a.m. breastfeeding him, and I was just talking to God. I'm like, God, I'm like, you already know. I'm like, he is yours. I'm like, however it's gonna play out, it's gonna play out. I will pray every single day that you will do your best to watch my babies and have my babies and heal my babies.
Yeah.
But he is yours.
Mm.
And anytime our boys go stay the night anywhere, me and my husband we just do a prayer because
Yeah.
we do stress about our second having seizures and like,
Yes.
or you just think of all these crazy things in your head being helicopter parents.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know what? We're giving it to God and he's got them and
Yeah.
we're going to go on date night without stressing.
Yes.
And so it is a crazy turn point in your life because the things that you can't control,
Yeah.
God can heal, God can help, God,
Totally.
and so.
And you get to the
Yeah.
point where you're like, I literally don't control anything. Anything I think I'm controlling, I literally don't.
Yes.
And to give, because like you have those crisis, moments that you have these big, huge,
Yeah.
dramatic, down on the knees, bawling, scream, crying, giving them to Lord. But you remember that as a lesson. That is how I get peace and that is how I get strength. Because in my weakness, he is made strong.
Yes.
That's how I get my strength is in my weakness. I cry out to God and I surrender my kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's a lesson that you learned that you will have forever now. So you know now how to surrender your kids prior to the big scary thing.
Right.
So for those women who are watching who have had miscarriages and either they had babies after or they haven't had those babies yet, like how do they heal from having a miscarriage? Like what are like maybe, 3 or 4 things or that you have done to heal emotionally and spiritually from having miscarriages, from having the loss of a child? Because sometimes, women have lost children in other ways. Like I lost children by my own choice by having 2 abortions. Other women have maybe had children that died, of SIDS or whatever. It's like, it's still the loss of a child.
Yeah.
And so what are just a few things that maybe you did that has helped to heal some of that?
I feel like a few things, going throughout my miscarriages was, it was really almost focusing on, God's story and not mine. So I had a really hard time with that too. I would be like, this is what I want, and I want my life to be perfect, and God, I'm doing this, and I need you to back me. And I was never like, God, give me your plan for me and I'll back you.
Yeah.
And so that was a big turning point in my life that was like, okay, Mikaylah, you're not writing the story. God already wrote it. And so just kind of like tuning in and like looking for signs like, okay, like I'm not going to forcefully, go through. I'm going to feel it piece by piece.
Yeah.
And whenever I felt like I got on a direction and there was a stop sign or there was like a blockage and I felt like that was God being like, I'm trying to deter you back onto my path and like this is your path. But if you listen to me, this is the path that you're going to end up on. If you want to take the easier route, here we go. And so for me, it was like, I felt all of the grief. I let myself feel all of the grief. I wasn't afraid to look at my husband and say, I'm hurting and I need to be alone. I love you and I know you're hurting too. And I don't ever want to downplay the dad's side of miscarriages because it's rough on them as well. But I really felt like after my first miscarriage, I tried to ignore it after my first loss. And I just was like I got this and like I'm determined and I'm gonna, and I didn't let myself feel it. So after I had experienced a few losses, I was like, no, you're gonna process, you're going to go through the stages and you're gonna realize, that baby is in heaven and you will see that baby again. This is not a forever thing. I'm like, you will go to heaven. Heaven is eternity, and you're going to have a lifetime in heaven with those babies. And so I think letting myself go through each grieving process and fully feel every emotion and just being like, this isn't the end. It might have been a short stay, or they were only here for a couple years, or whatever the case scenario was with your child. You have an eternity to look forward to. And I think that's what
Totally
pushed me through a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just knowing that it was like, I was going to see them one day. And like I said, seeing that butterfly at my wedding was such reassurance of that.
Yes.
Like, you know, and so I did that. I really focused on finding my faith when I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I
like
fought
forcing
it.
yourself to go to church. Like, I don't feel like it, but I'm making myself go.
Yeah. So I did not want to. My husband was a big helper and advocate in that time. But I would be like, nope, I want to lay on the couch and sit in my depression. And he was like, you're not gonna ever get over this or grow if you don't find your faith again. And so, like, grab my hand, we're going to church and we're gonna try to find your faith. And so I really forcefully was like, had my face in the Bible and in scripture. And I felt like every time I went to church, the pastor gave me exactly what I needed to hear. It's so crazy how that works out. Actually, the first time I went to church after experiencing miscarriage, it was about miscarriage, which was like crazy. Just like the loss in like the mother's womb and certain things like that. So I forced my faith back into my life, even when the devil was trying to pull me one way. I was with God going the other way.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have to forgive anyone?
I had to forgive God. I had to forgive God for blaming him, for loss. And I had to forgive him for, I don't know, I had to forgive myself too.
Yeah.
I had to forgive myself for blaming God, for thinking he was punishing me, that it was a punishment.
And forgiving yourself for having the thoughts of abortion, right? Because I know that was a big place that you were stuck at.
Yeah.
And so you had to like release yourself from that by forgiving yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That was and that was probably the hardest step, was because at first it was like, okay, I forgive God for like, this way. But it was like, holy moly, swallowing the pill of like forgiving yourself for thinking a certain way or wanting to do or doing a certain thing is hard. And you feel like when you're forgiving yourself, you feel unforgivable for some reason.
Totally.
I feel like I can forgive other people so much easier than it is to me. Like, oh, okay, like I forgive you for what you did, Mikaylah. Like, you're better, you're going to be fine, or whatever the case is. So yeah.
Forgiving yourself is the hardest for everyone, including myself. Like, forgiving yourself is brutal. And a big reason why is because we're like, I knew better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I knew better. I knew it was wrong, but I still did it. Or I knew it was wrong, but I still thought it. I still planned it out, And so that's a big one. But we have high standards for ourselves. And it's like, oh, even though God totally forgives you for that, doesn't matter. I don't forgive myself. Like, I'm still mad at myself, or I'm still like disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
And so, but you did it. You were able to forgive yourself for that. You were able to forgive God. You were able to hear God's voice, because a lot of how you got free, I believe, was that the Lord was speaking truth into you, and know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
And so it's like when God speaks a truth into our ears, speaks a truth into our heart, that truth will set us free. But also, Jesus is the truth. He is the way, he is the truth, he is the life. And you were allowing Jesus into your life. He was coming after you hardcore, but you finally responded. You didn't have to respond. You could have been like, no, I'm not going to church.
Yeah.
Oh, I got this weird feeling in church and I just booked it out of there. I was like, no, I don't want nothing to do with that. But you, as he pursued you, you went towards him.
Right.
Which is amazing. And the other thing about how God having a plan for your life. Most people think, and I thought this as well, when I become a Christian, it's going to be perfect. No more tears, no more murder, no more cheating, no more drugs, no more addiction, no more nothing. It's going to be amazing. I was literally describing heaven. Thinking that's what being a Christian was. So I was very surprised that I went through a whole bunch of stuff after giving my life fully to the Lord. I was really shocked by that because we think, well, he's God, so he's good and he's all loving. And so we're going to just have this perfect life. It's like, no, you're picturing the American dream. You're not picturing real Christianity.
Right.
And real Christianity is full of heartache, just like a regular person who's not a believer.
Yeah.
We all have heartache. We all go through trauma. We all go through stuff. The difference is we go through it with God and for God. And we know that there is hope after this life.
Right.
But we still go through the same hard stuff.
Right.
So I believe, though, that this part of your story, as rough as it was to go through, and even rough to talk about, it's got to be like a little, you know, a little twinge of like, that doesn't feel good to talk about, especially the details. But your story is so incredible. And the incredible part about it, not that you went through it, but that you overcame it. And are able to use your story to help other people, because now your story is your authority. Like, I can't imagine like the 1 in 4, it's probably more than that now. I mean, who even knows? But there's so much child loss. But the fact that you went through what you went through and still believe in Jesus and are still pursuing him and still had the guts to even get pregnant again, or the guts to stay with your husband, and instead of just like, oh, forget it, I'm a failure, my body's a failure, and I'm just not gonna be with you, you know? So all the things that you overcame, and now living the life that you're living and ministering, you know, I'll call it ministering. You're ministering to other moms, helping them like get cute again, you know, but you have no idea how many of those women have your story. And now they get to hear that they can relate to you on this. So I can only imagine how many private messages you're going to get now concerning your healing versus just, you have really cute clothes and you're helping me feel cute again because I feel bad about myself on the inside. This is really going to just like open up a whole ministry for you. That God is going to use the worst part of your pain, the worst part of your past, the things that you had to fight for. Like, you had to fight for your freedom. It wasn't just like, here, Mikaylah, here's your freedom. Yay. And you live happily ever after and everything's great now. No, you had to fight for that. And you learned a lot of valuable skills because of it. Your gifting is now going to be used by God. Your gifting combined with your story, that God's going to actually bring you women that need to heal. And you're going to be able to pray things out with them. You're going to be like, this is how I forgave God. This is how I forgave myself. This is how, you know, I received God's forgiveness for even thinking about abortion, you know, this is how I actually healed. Let me walk you through this and let me walk you straight into the arms of Jesus, because he's actually the one that healed me.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Going through everything that I went through, I mean, everything I feel like was for a purpose.
Totally.
For people that know about my first miscarriage, I don't know, not everybody knows about all of them until now, but after my first miscarriage and we like kind of posted that publicly, I would have women reaching out to me like, I just had one too. Like women that I know very well that were like, we never said anything, but I just had one. Like, how are you doing? Because I'm struggling. And so like connecting with them on that point, and now I'm at a healed point in position. I feel like I can talk them through it, just like you said.
Totally.
Like, hey, like I've been there. I've actually been there 5 times.
Yes.
This is what helped me. And with all of that pain and suffering, in the moment, I was like doubtful of God, but now coming out of it, I'm like, praise God. Like I there's no way I would have ever been able to come out of that without him there, right there with me and right there with my, you know, my husband. And I came out so much stronger than I thought I was going to be, because at those low points, I just was like, I'm giving up on life. Like you just get so deep in where it's like nothing matters anymore. My career doesn't matter. Like literally nothing matters. I'm giving up on life because I can't get exactly what I want right now. So the way God healed me and has like flourished me into this person that not only can talk about her story, but heal other women. I feel like that's part of my purpose. And it's been exciting finding my purpose. But yeah, it's crazy.
And so much of our purpose comes out of our pain. Like, you know, my whole ministry literally is built on the foundation of what I went through and then how I healed. And so people come to me all the time who need healing from the same things I was healed from. And so I just believe that your story is your authority
Uh-huh.
and that there is purpose in your pain.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Lord is going to start bringing women to you now that you have been outspoken about this part of your past and the healing, because you give women hope, like, because they might not be healed yet. Most of them probably aren't healed yet. But for them to be able to know that they can reach out to someone, text somebody or DM you or whatever to be like, hey, me too. Like, I struggled with this too. Hey, what was that one thing you said about forgiving yourself? How did you do that? Or whatever is going to be so powerful. And in that for me is what makes it to where when the Lord says, like, he works all things together for good.
Yeah.
When I get to help someone heal from something I was healed from, it makes me feel like I'm so glad I went through that. Not that I would want to go through it again.
Right.
I would never want to go through my past again. But I'm so thankful that I have the story that I have, because it makes it to where I can help other women. I can help them heal the way that I healed. And so I do believe that God is going to use you mightily in this area. And through this, you're going to be a voice for the voiceless.
Right.
You're going to be able to speak up for those who are suffering in silence, because so many other women are like, I've gone through that too, but I'm just doing things alone in the bathroom with the door locked. I don't even tell my own husband.
Right.
Wow, this is nice that I could reach out to somebody who actually gets that.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the Purely His podcast. And I know it was really intimidating at first, like, oh my gosh, this is like, we're really doing this. So in this, I really feel like we need to just pray for those women who are struggling the way that you used to struggle, and to be able to just give them hope for, for their future. So would you like to pray for them?
I would.
Okay.
Okay. Dear Lord, I hope that you're watching over all the single mamas right now. I know that you're with them. They don't feel like you are with them, or they might not feel like you are with them. But we know that you're wrapping your arms around them. Lord, please wrap your arms around the mama that had just lost her kid or her baby, or a miscarriage. She's probably going to feel like she's pulling away from you at this moment, feeling like you failed her, but you're the God of all healer, and you're going to heal her out of this and protect her heart, and protect her babies up in heaven with you. Lord, I'm so thankful for this podcast today. I hope it reaches women that are struggling in these departments, that don't know how to speak out about miscarriage and abortion. And Lord, I hope and they know that they're not alone in this journey, that there's so many women that have gone through the same things and that are going through the same things. And I hope that they can speak up and not fight it alone. To speak up to anybody, Lord, whether it's you admitting it out loud, or talking to a friend, or reaching out to somebody on this podcast, because they need to know that they're not alone during this. So Lord, I just hope that you are wrapping your arms around anybody that might be struggling with abortion or miscarriage. I'm sending healing prayers to them. Lord, watch over them. May their, questions be answered, and stay by them through it all. And yeah, amen.
I knew that would make you feel more vulnerable, but I'm like, it's different coming from you. It's different coming from you. I think it's important that because it's your story and it's personal to you, that it comes from you versus coming from me. And also it's me helping you step into your calling.
I know. I think
welcome
it's hard.
to your calling.
Praying out loud is so much different than praying in your mind. You like have everything, and then you pray out loud and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't remember what I'm saying, but it is something that I'm working on and that I'll continue to work on. So it's exciting.
Well, because prayer is not a performance.
Yeah.
And we're not, it's just, we're just talking to the Lord,
Yeah.
and he already knows everything
Yeah.
anyways. And we do get better as we practice,
Yeah.
but yeah, he loves your heart, and he's so
Oh.
proud of you that
Oh.
you came up out of this, and that
Yeah.
you overcame this, and that you're willing to share your story, because your story just all points back to Jesus.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be an opportunity, and you'll see, it's just like me. Whenever I share my story, man, they just line up, and me too. I understand. Oh my gosh, how did you do that? So I believe the same thing's going to happen for you, and it'll be a blessing, and it'll actually bring a deeper healing to you that you don't even know you still need.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to talk to women that are struggling, and for them to open up. And I think it's a really big part of my testimony that I get to share, and then the purpose that I get to fulfill with Jesus. So yeah.
And it'll make your babies proud too,
Yes.
that their life was not in vain, or that their death was not in vain, and that they matter to you, and that you're going to use that as something to be able to help others.
Right.
So yeah. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us, and join us next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.